be quite sure as to what you want and make sure that gets put into a scheme.
Yeah.
And I think that also helps then with the pricing of the project. The more information you've got to make the contractor's life easier, the more you're going to get back. So a good contractor will know from a planning drawing what's required if it was an extension, for instance. So you don't need to get too hung up on the specification. But if you're going out for 3 or 4 prices, you don't want 3 or 4 different prices for 3 or 4 different projects. So I would always say, given we've got the time at the moment, I would always commission your architect or your designer to produce the building regs drawings, because that will give a sufficient level of detail. If you want to go one further, I would also ask them to produce you a blank schedule of costs, so that you've got at least a package to send to the contractor. And then when you get 3 or 4 packages back, when you get 3 or 4 prices back, you've got a consistent comparison. And I'd always go for 3 or 4 prices, because it's not a race to the bottom. I always think that you want to compare how much value you're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I suppose that's one of those things. So were they an architect, somebody who's not done this before, would an architect be in a position to be able to provide those accurate prices?
They are. What I would say is that the architect, if it becomes the architect's responsibility to get your prices, you're probably going to pay quite a reasonable fee for an architect to stay involved throughout the project, when in reality, if the drawings are detailed enough, you're able to go out and get your own prices. But certainly from a cost schedule point of view, they should be able to break down the scope of the works that are required for you then to go out for a consistent price. So I would always take it up to what we call a pre-tender stage, and a good designer, a good architect would know what that means.
Okay, so pre-tender. Okay, and then with the 3 or 4 quotes solution you've just mentioned there, I think that's a really valid point you make, because it's not just this, is it? It's whatever we're doing, we don't always go for the cheapest option, do we? Because actually, what does that mean? Like, it's my home, it's my project, it's my extension. I don't want to do this on the cheapest route. It's more about the value that's been added, and I think that's a really valid point you make there.
I think that can sometimes come through in what you ask for as well, because in theory, all the prices should be consistent, and therefore there should be no issue with offering the taking the cheapest price. But certainly, research into testimonials that the contractors have, research into previous projects that they've done. I think one of the key things to ask at the tender stages would be, is the contractor willing to enter into a written contract? Because I often think that if a contractor doesn't raise that, it says more about the contractor than it does about the client. And equally, a good contractor would also provide some form of cash flow, just to demonstrate to the customer, to the client, that this is a process.
Yeah.
And if the prices are significantly higher, with 1 or 2 prices, really examine why they're more expensive, because it might be that actually you're going to get a far better service than perhaps the cheaper price. But you can qualify that then. You can make a decision based upon that. I think quite often the highest price gets discarded and the lowest price is sometimes taken without considering what was actually included in the higher price.
Yeah, really good point. And I was going to ask you there about how does somebody protect themselves, because obviously once you've commissioned the work and it starts going underway. So, for example, this scenario we find ourselves in at the moment, if some work's got started, we've got an extension on the way, and then we've got a coronavirus issue. How's the best way for somebody to protect them? Is it with a contract? Is it with a evidencing cash flow? Would that be a sort of?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, within the industry, there's as I said before, every situation is slightly different. However, with a contract, there's usually a force majeure clause, an act of God, if you will, and there is current debate within the industry as to whether this actually, believe it or not, is force majeure.
Right.
However, without wishing to sound too complicated for this scenario, again, a good contractor will communicate with you. A good contractor will let you know what's happening. It seems in this situation that if the one thing that a contractor can do is to leave your project safe, and if it takes just a couple of days of should we say social distance working to make a project watertight, you would expect that to be a stage where the contractor could leave it for a while. But I think there's a level of understanding at the moment that contractors are doing what they can, but equally a client can reasonably expect a contractor to do the things to make it safe.
Okay. Brilliant. I think there's some great points there to note, actually. So thank you very much. So what I'll do is I will make your contact details available in the comments below, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Because if anybody's watching this and thinks, well, actually, you know what, I was planning my extension and things, and it'd just be great to have a port of call, because actually, I think it's the hardest part about things like this is sometimes if you haven't done this before, is who's you going to speak to. Not everybody wants to go on Google, and I think it's good to go to somebody that possibly you've got a relationship or a recommendation. And I think just for the audience on this is that it's really important from a mortgage perspective to consult with the contractors and things first, because not all lenders, but some lenders, for example, will want you to have consulted planning and have a framework of works before you actually even consider any mortgage finance for the work. So the two do coincide quite closely, don't they?
I think that's the importance of the cash flow, and an importance for the breakdown of cost. Because if you correct me if I'm wrong, Ross, but does it not make your life easier if those elements are fairly transparent and you're able to present that as part of the mortgage application?
Yeah, like I say, not all lenders will want that, but a lot will, and I suppose it makes it just a little bit more. Just makes the process just a little bit more transparent, because if we're sort of providing a sort of schedule of works alongside the application, it's like anything, the underwriter is going to like that, so it's just a bit of a nice top tip to integrate into the video, I think. So.
Well, if there's anything I can do to help your clients, obviously, just let me know. And I'm more than happy to speak to people. They don't have to use us as a contractor. You're just more than happy to share what we've learned over the years.
Lovely, thank you. And I suppose from a contractor's perspective, having mortgage finance down the line is probably quite reassuring as well, I would have thought.
Yeah, it's and it also allows us to advise, if you will, the client that it's going to land on budget, because if a client is instructing stuff that's going to take them over budget, it's always great to know that we've they've got funds, so it makes life a lot easier. It's all about a two-way communication, like you say.
Lovely. So no, some really good points there. So thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. And like I said, everyone, I'll make Mark's contact details available in the comments. So if you do want to touch base with him or ask him any questions about any projects you've got planned or thinking about even planning, I'm sure he'll be more than happy to host them. So yeah, thanks very much, and all the very best, Mark, and take care.
Take care of yourself. Thanks again.
Cheers, mate. Bye.